officially that time of year to reflect on my reading. I can't believe we're already in June, halfway through the year already. It's so insane to me. I feel like I just filmed last year's mid-year book freakout tag, and now I'm filming another one. It feels like no time has passed, but here we are. This is my third year doing the mid-year book freakout tag. I love doing these types of videos, and I love reflecting on my reading, and I love chatting with you guys about books in the comments. So I'm very excited for today's video. It's going to be a fun one. I feel like I've had a really good reading year so far. Obviously there have been some disappointments along the way, but for the most part I feel like I've read some really good books, and I'm excited to talk about them today. I try to narrow down the list of books to include in this video as much as possible, and I try not to repeat too many of the books too many times, but it's kind of hard because the books that I selected for this video are books that I truly love or I was tremendously disappointed with, so it's kind of hard not to repeat, but we'll see what we get into. I have 12 questions that I'm going to be answering, or I guess 12 prompts that I'll be answering, and I'll have all of these questions in the description box below if you want to film your own mid-year book freakout tag, or if you want to even answer them in the comments below. I think that would be really fun, and we can continue the conversation in the comments. Starting with best book you've read this year, and I chose 2 books. I'm going to choose 3 books. No, I'll keep it to the 2 that I originally chose. First book is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. If you're unfamiliar with this book, it's a summer romance. It follows 2 characters who are basically cursed when it comes to relationships. Every time they're broken up with, their significant other ends up moving on and finding the love of their life. So they're kind of left in limbo and wondering if there's something wrong with them. Since they both suffer from the same curse, they decide to kind of break it off together and date one another. They believe that if they date each other and they break up with one another, they will each end up moving on to find their one true love. But through them dating and spending time together, they realize that maybe they don't want to break up after all, but then real life gets in the way. The male main character Justin has a lot of family drama. The female main character has a lot of family drama as well, but what I really loved about this book was that it was super realistic and dealt with real life problems, and I could see this book actually happening in real life, and I just loved how the characters handled everything that life threw at them. I loved the character growth with the female. She overcame so much trauma. She did a lot of work on herself and accepted her past for what it was. I also related a lot to the female main character Emma. I've been through similar situations that she went through in this book, and it made me tear up in so many different places. I literally finished this in less than 24 hours. I was that obsessed with it. I want to read it again so I can go back and highlight and annotate it because I loved this book so much. So if you haven't read Just for the Summer, I highly recommend. It's such a cute beach read, but it also deals with a lot of deep topics, so get your tissues ready. Then the second book that I selected for this question was My Dark Desire by LJ Shen and Parker S. Huntington. I absolutely love this book. I can't remember when I read it. I think I read it in February. It is the second book in the, I forget what the series is called. I know the first book was My Dark Romeo, which I really enjoyed, but I forget what this series is actually called. I think it's like Prince Lane or something. I don't know. I'll have it on the screen, but this is the book that followed My Dark Romeo, which again, I really loved that book. I read it last year, and it was such a good little dark enemies to lovers romance. This one's kind of like a Cinderella retelling because it follows a female main character who was well off at one point, but then her father died, and then her evil stepmother and evil stepsisters have made her life completely impossible and have made her life miserable. They have stolen money from her. They are working her to the bone, and she's trying to get out of that toxic environment. And she runs into her prince Zachary's son, who actually ends up hiring her as a maid. She helps him overcome some trauma that he's had since he was a child. I love the characters. I love the side characters immensely as well. Romeo and Dallas from the first book are constantly making an appearance throughout this book. I just loved Romeo in the first book so much, so seeing him in this book just made me smile, and I love Zachary. Everything about this book was 10 out of 10. If you want a really good romance that's a little bit of spicy but also deals with like some traumatic life shit, definitely pick this one up. I don't want to spend too much time describing the books because I've talked about a lot of these books so much on my channel already, so I'm going to try my best to stop blabbering and to keep it straight to the point. But yeah, if I end up talking a lot, I apologize. The next question was best sequel you've read this year, and honestly I couldn't really think of a sequel aside from My Dark Desire that I really enjoyed. I mean, My Dark Desire was a sequel, and then Just for the this summer is the third book in the Part of Your World series. I couldn't really think of a sequel that really blew my mind away aside from these two. I really wouldn't categorize these as sequels. Well, actually, I am currently in the middle of a sequel right now. I'm currently reading Glow of the Everflame, which is the second book in the Kindred's Curse saga by Penn Cole. I recently discovered this adult fantasy romance on Kindle Unlimited, and I've been binge reading it. It's so freaking good. The first book was a lot slower than the second book, but I'm enjoying the second book so much. So I would say that this is probably the best sequel I've read, but I also haven't finished it, so take that with a grain of salt. But so far, that would have to be the best sequel that I've read this year, because other sequels that I have read have been very disappointing, to say the least. New release you haven't read yet, but you want to. So I would say the Leather and Lark book by Bryn Reaver. This is book 2 of the Runeris Love trilogy. Butcher and Blackbird was the first book, and I really did like Butcher and Blackbird. I really like the concept and the plot. If you're unfamiliar with Butcher and Blackbird, it basically follows two serial killers who only kill other serial killers, and they kind of team up for a yearly competition with one another, and they both have had really dark traumatic passes, which kind of explain why they have become serial killers and why they hunt other serial killers. But I will say that I really didn't like that the author didn't dive into more of the female main character's past, and I just wasn't loving the romance between the two characters. I didn't really feel a ton of chemistry. But with that being said, I'm really excited about the second book because it follows two characters that I fell in love with in Butcher and Blackbird. I feel like their book is just going to be 10 times better. It recently came out and I just haven't had a chance to pick it up, but I definitely want to. I need to go order it so it can come in ASAP. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I have a couple books that I listed here. I have To Shatter the Night by Catherine Quinn. It comes out December 3rd. This is the book that I'm most excited about, and it's the book that comes out the latest. Like, it literally comes out the last month of this year, and I am just so excited, and I can't believe that I have to wait until December. It's a sequel to the book To Kill a Shadow, which I will talk about this book in a minute. I absolutely love this book so much. Basically, it is a YA fantasy, but it doesn't really read as a YA fantasy. It kind of reads more as an adult fantasy because a lot of the characters are a lot older. I mean, they're 18 or 19, but I feel like a lot of YA fantasy, the characters are maybe 15 or 16, and this one they're a little bit older and a little bit more mature. So to me, it felt like I was reading a adult romance, and I really enjoyed this book. So I'm very excited for its sequel to come out later this year. I'm also very excited for Jennifer Lynn Barnes' The Grandest Game. It follows the Hawthorne brothers and Avery from the Inheritance Game series, which I love that series so much. I read it, I want to say 2 years ago now, almost 2 years ago, and I loved it. I didn't read her book that came out last year, The Hawthorne Brothers. It didn't really call to me. Let me know in the comments if you think I should read it, if it adds anything to the series. But this one sounds like it's going to be really exciting because I feel like Jennifer Lynn Barnes is going back to the basics and back to the mystery and puzzles that we all loved from the Inheritance Game series. So very excited about that one. I'm also very excited about the fourth book in the Kindred Curse saga, which is called Burn of the Everflame by Penn Cole, which is the fourth book of the saga that I mentioned earlier. I'm currently in book 2 and I'm absolutely loving this series so much. If you haven't checked out the series, I highly recommend. If you want a good adult fantasy romance, it's going to have you at the edge of your seat, and it's also going to have a lot of world building and a lot of character development. Definitely check out this series. Again, I'm only on book 2 and the fourth book is coming out next month, so the series can totally go to shit, but for now I'm really enjoying it, and I love the characters, I love the romance, I love the plot, the war that's going on. Everything is just 10 out of 10. Writing is perfect. Definitely go check it out. And then I'm also very excited about Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer, I believe is her last name. It comes out August 8th. It is the sequel to the Assistant to the Villain book, which I absolutely love this book. I gave it 5 stars. It's a romantic comedy fantasy, and this was my first ever romantic comedy fantasy book that I've ever read, and it's just so well written. The characters are freaking hilarious. The plot is hilarious, and I just really enjoyed this book. So very excited for its sequel to come out, and I'm definitely getting it right away. And then we have biggest surprise of the year. So I have 2 books for this category. The first book that I have is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Aside from the love hypothesis, and I've said this a million times on my channel, so if you watch any of my other videos, then I probably sound like a broken record, but aside from the love hypothesis, I have not enjoyed any other book by Ali Hazelwood. They all feel like knockoffs of the love hypothesis hypothesis, or it feels like she's trying to recreate the success of the love hypothesis with all her other books, and they all just read the same to me. So I didn't enjoy any of her other books, and Bride was actually my last like hurrah with Ali Hazelwood. It was going to be the last time I ever picked a book up from her. If I hated it, I was never going to read any of her other books in the future, and if I loved it, I was going to continue to give her a chance. And I actually really enjoyed this book. It is a paranormal romance. It follows a vampire and a werewolf and a marriage of convenience, kind of enemies to lovers as well, because they have been taught to hate one another and their species for years. So their marriage is trying to bring the vampires and the werewolves together and to unite them as one. And I really enjoyed the writing. It's very different from any of her other books, which is why I enjoyed it so much. And I love the romance. It's also very much slow burn. Like the characters don't make a move towards one another until the very, I want to say, last couple chapters, and I really enjoy that. It wasn't overly spicy, it wasn't overly done. It had the right amount of like modern vibes mixed in with werewolves and vampires. Really like the side characters, really like how the romance of the two characters came to be, especially since they were just married to one another for convenience and for basically a peace treaty. And again, just really enjoyed the writing. It kind of felt like Ali Hazelwood really enjoyed writing this book. I feel like she had a lot of fun with this book. That could just be me, because I know that a ton, literally millions of other people enjoy her other books. They just fell flat for me, and this one was so good. It had me hugged. I didn't want to put it down. This definitely was one of the biggest surprises for me, because I thought that I was going to read it and absolutely hate it. And then another huge surprise for me was To Kill a Shadow by Catherine Quinn. I briefly mentioned this book earlier, but I bought this book on a whim on Amazon, and I mainly bought it because pages are purple and I thought it was stunning. I also bought it because the plot intrigued me a lot. I haven't really seen a lot of people talk about this book, but I'm also not on Book Talk, and I also don't really watch a ton of booktube, if I'm being honest, at least recently, because I'm too busy as a mom to watch other booktuber videos. So I don't know if this one is viral or not, but I loved it so much. You guys need to read this book. Go give it a chance. I was really impressed with the writing. I was really impressed with the characters, the scenery, the plot, how quickly it advanced. I will say that if you don't like fantasy books that take forever with world building and are kind of bored with all of that, definitely check out this book, because I think it had a really good balance of world building and character development while also keeping you entertained with the plot. I went on Goodreads and I saw a couple people complaining that the author didn't go overboard with world building, like she didn't spend a ton of time, and honestly, I don't mind world building if it's done right, but I know that a lot of people hate it, especially if the author takes so much time explaining absolutely everything that has to do within their fantasy world. Again, I think this one has a really good balance. It's also dual POV, so if you like that, then you'll really enjoy this, because you get both the male and female's main character point of view. And Jude, the male main character, is 10 out of 10. I love how strong he is. I love how he is a commander. He's feared by everyone except for Kiara, the female main character. They see a similar spark in each other and they gravitate towards each other from the very beginning, even though they're not supposed to, even though it's forbidden. And the plot twists are so good in this book. Also, it ended in a cliffhanger, so I'm very, very excited, again, to read the sequel that comes out in December. If you want a good fantasy that's going to keep you at the edge of your seat, definitely check out To Kill a Shadow. It's so good, you guys. I did not expect to love that book so much. At most, I thought I was going to give it a 3-star, and I ended up giving it 5 stars. Loved it. Biggest disappointment of the year. I have 2 books in this category. The first book, Don't Come For Me, but I was disappointed immensely by Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is the second book in the Fourth Wing series. Actually, it's not called Fourth Wing. I think it's the Empyrean series or something like that, but the first book is Fourth Wing. I absolutely loved Fourth Wing so much, which is why this one was such a disappointment. I didn't hate it as much as other people here on BookTube have dissected this book. Like, I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't terrible. The writing wasn't terrible, but it did feel rushed. It felt like Rebecca didn't have a lot of time to write this book. Maybe she was pressured by her agent, her publisher, I don't know, but this book definitely felt rushed to me. And I didn't like that Xaden, my beloved Xaden, was practically gone for the majority of this book. And I didn't like how the female main character character acted in this book. I get it that she went through a lot of traumatic things in the first book, but I just didn't like her behavior in this book. It felt like she made so much progress in the first book just to revert back to her old immature self. The cliffhanger slash plot twist at the end wasn't my favorite. I really don't see how the author is going to bring that back. I'm not an author myself, so maybe my brain just doesn't work that way. I just didn't really like how it ended, and if the author ruins the main character's relationship, I am going to lose my shit. If it doesn't end well in the third book, I am going to be extremely sad. I think there's going to be 4 books in total in this series, but hopefully for the next book, Rebecca takes her time with the writing, doesn't feel pressure, takes time to think about what she wants to do with Xaden, and that's all I'm gonna say about that one. The second biggest disappointment that I had was Mountains Made of Glass by Scarlett St. Clair. This is actually a fairy tale retelling, which I am a sucker for a good fairy tale retelling. I love fairy tales and I love when authors do adult versions of them. This one was just straight up smut from the very beginning, and I should have known because I have read a book by Scarlett St. Clair in the past. I think 2 years ago I read A Touch of Darkness, which was a Hades and Persephone retelling, and that one was straight up smut, which is fine if that's what you enjoy, but for me, I like a book to have more than just spicy scenes in them, and I really read for the romance, for the plot, for the character development, not so much for the spicy scenes or the smut. Again, if that is your thing, totally fine. Enjoy it, love it, have the time of your life with it, but me personally, I just don't like books like that, and I had decided to give Mountains Made of Glass a chance, even though I had such a bad experience with A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This book made me realize that, you know, her writing is just not for me. I am not the demographic that she is gearing towards, and that is perfectly fine. Other people can enjoy her books, I just didn't enjoy it. I honestly couldn't even tell you what the hell the plot was, aside from it being purely smut. And then favorite new author. So I have 2 favorite new authors. I would say Catherine Quinn, who wrote To Kill a Shadow, right? Talked about this book to death. And then I would say Penn Cole, which is the author of the Kindred Curse saga that I'm currently reading. 2 really good fantasy authors that I just don't see people recommending enough or talking about enough. Like I always see Sarah J. Maas, Rebecca Yarros, but I don't really see a lot of people talking about Catherine Quinn or Penn Cole, and I just loved their writing. They have a really nice balance, once again, of world building and character development and a plot that actually keeps you at the edge of your seat, doesn't bore you to death. The writing doesn't feel super young or immature, and I don't know, just really love their writing, so I'm definitely going to continue to check out more of their books. Newest fictional crush. That is so easy. I love Xaden from Fourth Wing. Come on now, like if you read Fourth Wing and you don't like Xaden, what is wrong with you? He was 10 out of 10 perfection. I also really love Luther from the Kindred Curse saga that I've been talking about a lot in this video. He is actually a prince in that saga, and Xaden and Luther are very similar. I mean, they're both very strong magical people, magical beings, and they both are very assertive, very feared among their peers. They also have a very soft, sensitive side, which I'm a sucker for. They're just my top 2 book boyfriends right now. I love a good, assertive, feared man. Well, I don't know what that says about me, but when there's a character, a male character in books that's like very grumpy, very feared, very powerful, but then his weakness and soft spot is the love of his life, the female main character, and he's mean and rude and ruthless to everyone else, but when it comes to her, she's his one weakness. I love that. And both Xaden and Luther are those types of male main characters, and I'm obsessed with them. A book that made you cry. I will have to say that the book that made me cry the most this year was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I mentioned earlier that I really related to Emma, and a lot of things that Emma went through are things that I personally have gone through with family members, and just seeing all that play out in a book and reading it, and also being on the other side of it already and being healed from my own personal experiences, but reading how Emma was trying to heal herself throughout the book and was trying to cope with everything that was happening to her. I don't know, it kind of brought me back to a time where I wasn't fully healed and where I was also going through the same things that she was going through. My heart just broke for her, and I just connected to her so much. I literally teared up so many times throughout this book. Also, Justin's struggles and Justin's family drama that he was going through was also very sad. Although I can't say that I related to Justin because I've never been in a position that Justin found himself in, I still felt for him and my heart still broke for him and for the decisions that he had to make. All in all, this book was just perfect. I loved it and it definitely made me cry. A book that made you happy, I will have to say Funny Story by Emily Henry. If you haven't read this book, I highly recommend to check it out. I highly recommend to read any of Emily's books. She never misses, in my opinion. This was actually a new release. It came out, I believe, in April, and I loved it from the very first page. It follows two main characters who are broken up with. The female main character is dumped by her fiance for the wedding. He dumps her to be with his childhood best friend. His childhood best friend ends up dumping her boyfriend to be with him, and the guy's fiance, the female main character, ends up being roommates, and both of them have a ton of character development. The female main character especially, since obviously it's basically from her POV, but the female main character has a ton of character growth. She goes from putting herself last in every situation in her life, kind of being the side character, to becoming the main character of her life, becoming the person that she was meant to be, not letting people walk over her, not letting her dreams go in the back burner, living for herself, not for others. Also, the banter between her and the male main character, again, 10 out of 10. Emily Henry does banter so well, and the male main character was just so great. He was like a cinnamon roll. He wasn't toxic, he wasn't super grumpy. He honestly got the female main character out of her shell immensely, and you only wanted what was best for her. And I don't know, he was just so cute, and I just wanted to give him a hug. I also really enjoyed that it wasn't overly spicy. It was very much slow burn, a little bit of fake dating as well. Also, the small town vibes were 10 out of 10. The summer vibes were, again, 10 out of 10. Again, everything in this book was 10 out of 10. If I could give it 6 stars, I would give it 6 stars. So definitely go read this book. It's going to put a smile to your face. Most beautiful book you've bought this year, I would have to say My Dark Desire is the most beautiful book I've bought this year. I mean, come on. The cover speaks for itself. Absolutely gorgeous. And then the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Honestly, I only have one series that I really want to read, and it's the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. I took the cover out, but you guys know this series is literally everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. I did start reading it. I'm on chapter 12, page 134. I did start reading it and I am enjoying it. It's definitely slow. Kind of reminds me of A Court of Thorns and Roses, where that book was super slow with the whole world building, character building, all that good stuff that Sarah J. Maas likes to write about. But the main reason why I haven't really read it is because this book is so awkward to hold. It's so thick. I'm also only able to read mostly at night because during the day I'm running after my toddler and I don't really have a lot of time to read during the day. So it's just awkward to hold in bed, and I don't really want to buy the Kindle version because I'm cheap and I think that's such a waste. I'll get to it eventually. Maybe when we go on vacation in a couple months, I'll bring this bad boy with me and read it on the plane. I really want to finish the series. I don't think the series is completed. I think there are 3 books out, but I think Sarah J. Maas is writing more. I may be mistaken. I don't know, but I definitely want to read the entire series before the end of the year, as well as the other books that I mentioned that I'm very excited that are coming out later this year. I want to read those as well. And yeah, that is pretty much it for this mid-year book freakout tag. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching. Let me know in the comments below what books you loved this year so far. What books did you hate? What books are you excited that are coming out? I feel like there are a ton of good books that are coming out. I see them pop up on Kindle Unlimited and I keep trying to make a list so I don't lose track of them because there's so many good books that are coming out from so many good authors that I have read and know and love already. I feel like this is a really good year for reading and for books, and very excited to continue reading. Really hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I would love to have you a part of my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.